So I need to be ready at any time to smash the patriarchy. Welcome to the Price Writer podcast with Catrin Townsend and me, Jeremy Keating. Join us as we explore and discuss the world of insurance-related books, offering our insights, recommendations, and crucially, how to apply it to insurance pricing roles. Today, we are talking about the book Win-Win by Joanne Littman. The title is a little obscure, but the subtitle gives a hint about what it's about. When business works for women, it works for everyone. Hi, Catrin.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hello. So, we previously talked about diversity in the podcast where we discussed the book Rebel Ideas. What did this book add to the conversation?
Well, this is a really practical book. It covers why gender diversity in particular is beneficial, whereas the Rebel Ideas book was more about diversity of thought. This one zones in a bit more on gender diversity. And it talks about why that's beneficial, but also gives you really clear actions you can implement. I really like that about this book. You're not going to go away thinking, okay, well, that's great, but how? You are going to have literally, there is a checklist in the back of the book. So if you're that kind of person, this is the book for you. They call it a cheat sheet.
Cool.
In the back of the book, it says takeaways, tips and takeaways for men and women.
Yeah.
And it just gives you basically a rundown of 12 things that you can do. So you're not going to read the book and then go, oh, what should I do now? You literally read the book and then it says, so summarize, here are your 12 things that you go away and do. So I like that about it. It's really practical, and particularly if you've found in the past that some business books are a little confusing.
Yeah, I don't really leave you with actions, I think, and is pretty common. Or it might leave you with exercises, but you don't necessarily have a way of doing it usefully at work.
So I love that. Gender diversity is more important now than ever with increased coding in pricing teams. And I've seen this when I've done graduate recruitment, is we've often said that Python skills are one of the things we're looking for, one of the nice to haves. And as I've been looking through CVs, I've compared the CVs of female and male applicants and just looked at what they've said about their own coding ability. Now, I learned to code using DataCamp. This video is not sponsored, by the way. I just really love DataCamp. It's a really good way to learn to code. They give you a short little video, then you go away and do some coding, and then it gives you the next video and so on. And so I've completed a lot of courses in DataCamp. And it was really funny when I was doing this graduate recruitment because I saw a lot of candidates saying, I've completed this specific course in DataCamp. And one of the courses that a lot of people mentioned was the course called Intermediate Python. Well, a lot of the male graduates were saying, I've completed the DataCamp Intermediate Python course. So therefore, I'm intermediate at coding.
Okay. Just know a bit there, I think. Okay.
The Intermediate Python course is 4 hours.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And
Not necessarily intermediate at Python at that point.
And the other problem with it is the only prerequisite for that course is the beginner Python course, which is another 4 hours.
Right.
For any of those people who are struggling with the maths there, what people are saying, particularly the male candidates were saying, was that they have done 8 hours of videos in coding and were therefore calling themselves an intermediate coder. Now,
Right.
I saw some female candidate CVs which said that they had done exactly the same 2 courses, but those candidates generally called themselves a beginner at Python, even though they'd covered the same material. And so I think this is just one example about how when we're talking about coding, we should be really aware of how different genders not just react to it, but how they talk about their own skills.
Yeah. I think that's a wider thing, though. A lot of CVs I've seen, the women naturally don't shout as loudly about the things they've done, I suppose, is kind of a nice way of putting it. And perhaps men do tend to. I mean, not everyone. I don't want to generalize overly, but yeah, I think there is a general tendency to be maybe a bit more confident about writing, I've done blah, 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 and I'm amazing at things on a CV as a man than perhaps a woman does feel comfortable doing.
I think one tip that I would give women who are writing their CV is write what you think and then give it to your most confident friend or a friendly male ally or colleague and say, can you summarize what my achievements are for me? And they're going to give it to you really directly and say, you've done this and it delivered this much value. And
Mhm.
that is exactly the phrasing you should probably use on your CV. When we're socialized to go for, we worked as a team and I contributed to the part, the very
Mhm.
small part, and all of this we're trying to minimize. But actually, your CV really is the time to
Mhm.
to really go for it in terms of confidence. Obviously, don't lie on your CV. That's not what we want to encourage people to do. But also,
No,
if you have genuinely achieved something, then be direct about it.
it is difficult when you have lots of CVs to go through. And in fact, they have talked in some countries about having CVs where you don't know things like people's names to make it harder for people to suffer sort of unconscious bias when they read a CV. But a little bit of me wonders if that actually makes the problem worse, because as we were talking about, women possibly don't push their achievements as hard as men do. So, in fact, not knowing the gender, you actually can't then, in your own mind, do anything about that. Why do you think women don't push harder with their CVs, though?
I think it is because of societal narratives that are
Mm,
told about women. That
okay.
even when kids are little, and I mean little, I mean, I see this with my daughter a lot. She's 4. And I've heard people call her bossy.
Oh,
I've heard my dad
okay.
call her bossy, and I've had to turn around to my
Right.
dad and say, "Don't call her bossy. She's a
Yeah.
natural leader, or she's
Okay.
she's being authoritative, or whatever it is." But even from when girls are very little, they're told that they are being too bossy, they're talking too much. The BBC did a fantastic show about this. I can't remember what it's called, but it was about 7-year-olds, and they went into year 1 classroom, and the scientist took note of how often a teacher asked a boy a question first instead of a girl. And,
Ooh,
you know, and these weren't old school teachers, these were modern primary school
yeah.
teachers, a lot of whom were women. And I think there is that natural bias that a girl who is chatty is talkative, she's loud, she's
Yeah.
too pushy, whereas a man doing the same thing is almost taking up the space that he should be. I'm gonna say should, in inverted commas.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Um, and so actually I think this story starts a lot earlier than graduate recruitment.
Yeah.
And of course, that's why the insurance industry alone can't fix it. We're not expecting that. But I think it does really push us to say, once people are in the door in
Yeah.
insurance, what can we do given that situation? And given that we know people are coming to us with their own life experience, which is going to be slightly different, obviously, for everyone, not just on
Mhm.
gender terms, but like say in class and wealth terms, how can we give people the opportunities to be judged fairly? That's what we're really
Yeah,
talking about here. We're
okay.
asking for opportunities for men and women to be judged fairly according to the actual merit rather than what we perceive their merit to be based on what they do or don't say or do or don't
Yeah.
dress like. It's not about the intention, it's about the impact.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because even when I started in insurance, the narrative was that having more gender diversity, particularly at senior levels, was a pipeline problem.
Mhm.
That historically there had been fewer women working, but now it was like 2012, women were starting to join a bit more, and so it'll just all sort itself out in a few years' time. Well, it's been 15 years, and a lot of teams are still not where they want to be in terms of gender split. And not just at the top level, but even at analyst level as well. And what I take from this is that diversity can't just be a pipeline issue. Diversity does need active involvement and active nurturing. The other problem that pricing in particular has is that pricing is a really high churn environment. It's very competitive. And the problem that Joanne talks about in the book is that in high churn environments, you tend to be quite focused on retaining people, particularly the people that you think might leave. and you might give them extra bonuses, or you might give them excellent reviews or more exciting projects. But do you assess that totally equally? So she mentions that people often perceive that men will have more options elsewhere and therefore are more likely to leave than women who are perceived to have fewer choices. And this extra, I'm going to say, retention bonus, even if it's not officially a payment, but these retention bonuses can contribute to the gender pay gap. And I thought it was a really interesting perception in the book because it's something I've never thought about, but high churn is such a problem in insurance pricing right now.
Yeah, it is.
And similar, I suppose, is as pricing has got more coding and technical heavy, who do you see as being technical in your organization? I think actually this affects almost the lower levels, not just the managers, so analysts and senior analysts. But I think subconsciously, a lot of us, and I include myself in this too, but I think we perceive women to be less technical, even if they've done the same number of data camp courses as men or things like that. I think we perceive women to be less technical. And in a code heavy and tech heavy environment, that's a real problem for female progression. And it can be things as subtle as if you have a coding task to do and you've got 2 graduates or 2 analysts, who do you give it to? You say, oh, Dave will be better at this task and Ella will be better at dealing with the stakeholders. Is that actually true? Or is that just a subtle judgment?
And I'm only really thinking about it now, but do you think there's a tendency actually to be quite binary where women are concerned? It's like either she's good at the management or she's good at the technical, actually. Yeah, I think there maybe is a tendency to be like that, actually. Yeah, I think that is quite valid, actually.
Yeah, that's tricky. It's tricky for all of us because we all have these biases. And then one of the things that she talks about in the book is that even women have these biases. I
Yeah.
know, I am guilty of this just as much as the next person, right? And it's not about making anyone feel bad about this. This is what society has led us to expect and led us to believe. So it's not about casting any blame or guilt about it. What it is saying is that you're missing out. You're missing out if you're not giving your female graduate coding opportunities just because you think that, oh, mate, she won't be as good as Dave might be.
Yeah.
You're missing out. Your business is missing out if you pigeonhole people into mommy track careers, or you don't give women more challenging additional projects because you think they won't want to do it, for example.
Do you think there's maybe a tendency to notice when women are struggling a bit more than with men? Say you've got a new graduate who's female and she doesn't take to the role terribly well. Do you think there is more of a tendency to note that with women and perhaps even, dare I say, suggest that the job isn't for them?
I don't know. I mean, I've been really lucky to have absolutely fantastic female graduates in my team across the board. I can't think of a single one. Maybe that's because hiring practices tend to be more weighted towards men, and therefore women have to be exceptional to be hired. I don't know. But I really, really strongly rate all the female graduates I've ever worked with. I do think there is an issue about the words we use to describe women at work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people are probably aware we shouldn't use the word bossy anymore because it basically just means assertive. And you'd never call a man bossy. You'd call him being a leader or whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think there are other phrases as well that we use. Like, I know I've been called team mom because I would remind the team that, yes, you have to do your CPD. And if you signed up for an actuarial exam, make sure you stick to your study schedule because, that's what you've agreed to. But the problem with that wording is that mums aren't paid. Being a mum is not a paid role.
Yeah.
And so calling me in that context a team mum makes the work seem less important and value adding.
The whole load of stereotypes that go with that phrasing. I was just thinking, and this like just like you were saying, it weirds me out when I encounter my own biases, where I think to myself, "No, I'm cool, I'm fine, I'm not biased." But team mom, conjures up a whole load of images in my mind that Team Dad does not actually. A completely different set of images in my mind just from that. And yeah, I can totally get with that because being described as a Team Dad would mean something entirely different.
I'm not even sure what it would mean. I've never even encountered that phrase, I guess. But
No,
yeah, I think
I haven't either. Think about it. Team Dad, you would be like, I would think of that as someone at the sideline, like shouting for everyone to do their work and cheering everyone on. And stuff. Whereas Team Mom suggests to me the person that organizes stuff for everyone. And like,
she
and
does the birthday cards or the leaving cards and makes sure that the team away day has got the right catering or brought the biscuits for our Monday meeting. And yeah, I mean, these things like
yeah,
making sure people log their CPD and stick to their study schedule. Whereas I feel like if it was a man doing the same task of that, he would say, wow, he's very supportive of his team. He's a good mentor, maybe. So I think that phrasing, for example, is problematic.
yeah, Team Dad to me would definitely suggest someone that's motivational, whereas Team Mom is someone that's organizing stuff. So odd because I had no idea I had that bias in my brain until we just talked about it.
I remember at one team day, I was introduced as my job title, which is fine. That's absolutely fine. And in the intro, they noted that I was an excellent example of a working mom.
Can I?
What was funny is I was doing a talk about pricing innovation. Unsurprisingly, I didn't mention my kids once.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I thought it was really interesting that even in a totally unrelated context, people still thought it was important to know that, she's a mom of two small children. And
and
I think,
believe it or not, I've never been described as a working dad.
yeah, it's we have a totally different picture of what working mom or career woman. You ever say career man? Oh, he's a real career
A
man.
career man. I don't know, maybe.
But
Maybe, but it would mean a different thing, definitely.
mm, yeah, I think Jacinda Ardern experienced a similar thing. Obviously,
Yeah.
me and Jacinda Ardern very close, very similar. But I think she mentioned going through a similar thing, even when the context was political or diplomatic. If you're meeting with the president, the leader of the free world, or the head of the UN, and Jacinda Ardern, working mum, as if they just pulled her off the side of the football field. Like it's such a
Yeah.
strange thing. I think there is a difference in language in how we frame men and women.
Yeah, we definitely do. And it's interesting how it comes up so much in politics. And I wonder if that's because politics involves being a leader, that it's an area where people's subconscious and even conscious bias particularly play a big role in how they perceive things. But yeah, I can't think of a single news article about like what David Cameron wears. We recently saw David Cameron giving a talk. I don't remember even thinking about what he was wearing, and I can't remember what he's wearing right now. Um, no,
Blue
just the
suit.
standard, yeah, the
Colin?
standard uniform that David Cameron wears, absolutely. But you get these articles about the clothes women were wearing, and you also get articles about how much their bill for clothes cost the taxpayer and stuff. And it's like criticizing them for requiring to spend money on clothes because the world expects them to spend money on clothes. They probably don't even want to be doing that anyway. And yeah, just the words we use, like women politicians being too ambitious. Hillary Clinton gets a lot of dick for this exact thing, or that she's cold. Like, well, I think male politicians are pretty cold people, actually. But we don't say, oh, he's very cold, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
Rachel Reeves crying at work happened 2 weeks ago. There was a whole lot of stuff. Should she resign? And is she really fit to do the job? There are a lot of male politicians who have done probably more surprising things, I think, or things that have led me to question their ability to lead the
Yeah,
country.
you know, the only people I've dealt with crying at work actually were all women.
Mm. But women cry when they feel angry. I think that is really underappreciated. That you don't always cry because you're sad. I think that is a misconception that we only cry when we're sad. Actually, women particularly cry for a range of reasons. This has been well documented by a lot of researchers. And, I know that I've in the past cried because I'm feeling cross at myself. I'm feeling frustrated with myself. I'm feeling angry that someone made some assumptions, and I feel angry about that. And I kind of what I want to do is shout at them, but that's not really how it can manifest.
You
So actually, it's a lot more complicated than that.
That's interesting because I think the only times I cry when I'm sad. The occasional film as well. Oh, Up. Like, yeah, I know Up is a difficult one though, isn't it? I
Everyone
mean, it's
cries
not.
up.
Yeah, but it's not just the montage at the start; it's the house at the end. Because the house obviously symbolizes his wife when the house falls to the ground at the end, and he says it's just a house. Mm.
And I think of all the angst, I'm going to say, about Theresa May's leopard print shoes. Because she's wearing leopard print shoes. And
Yeah.
what does that mean for what the budget may or may not include? And I was like, oh, you're expecting the two things to be linked. I can't remember, apart from that one time that Rishi Sunak wore, or was it Sambas or something? I can't remember any reporting on male politicians' attire.
I think sometimes there was mentions, but the Rishi Sunak thing is often actually class and wealth related. That's the interesting undertone with that actually. Not because of the crazy way that it's pointing out that he's a rich, he's a exceedingly rich person, which comes with its own level of privilege. But no, you're absolutely right, actually. There's so much in the way particularly politicians are treated.
I think generally women's clothing says more than men's. The book mentions Carl Stefanovic, who is an Australian broadcaster, and he wore the same suit on TV for an entire year. And he didn't receive a single comment. Single comment. Not one. But his co-host received multiple comments because she wore the same outfit twice in a month, and people wrote in to comment on that. And I think this kind of goes back to, a point about David Cameron. Do you judge your colleague differently if she wears a dress rather than a trouser suit? If she comes in wearing a trouser suit, are you thinking, oh, wow, she's going to be kind of, say, boss bitch? Are we allowed to say that on I don't know. Do you think that she looks like she's trying too hard if she wears a trouser suit? Whereas a man in suit trousers and a pale blue shirt, and it always seems to be a pale blue shirt, by the way, is pretty universal. That you could go to almost any meeting or any work event in that outfit, and it would be totally fine. I can't think of an outfit for women that would be the same like that.
There is no equivalent. I mean, you see this in other areas. If you imagine with pop stars, actually, like man, jeans and a t-shirt, it's fine wearing that. You can go and give a convict battery in jeans and a t-shirt. No, women can't. That would be in the news. That would be this pop star did not make an attempt. How rude. Whereas a man can literally roll up in whatever he was wearing that day, give a concert or a talk or whatever, and no one would comment on it. Only makes me right fact I actually own 5 of these t-shirts, and it's the thing I wear for work.
Jeans and t-shirt.
Yeah,
Good enough
jeans
for
and a
price
t-shirt.
writer. That's good enough.
Absolutely. Should be good enough for everyone. Do you know, I can remember a report that was about gender bias in the insurance industry. And it concluded recommending that we all went and did unconscious bias training because so much of this is like under the surface. And often it's not a single thing, it's hundreds of small things that add up to a lot of bias. But the interesting thing was that every single time in this report that it had anything to do with men and women, so the chart, the questions, the quote, every time man, woman, every single time. And I remember just how jarring it was that it ended by recommending do something about unconscious bias. Because it's absolutely right. It's often the amalgamation of hundreds of small things that cause these problems. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought that was a brilliant example of exactly the problem it was talking about.
Even in the book, and obviously this book is written by someone who studies gender bias for a living and is a woman herself. Even in the notes that she puts that in one of the sections she was talking about 2 doctors, and the first draft, she referred to the female doctor using just the doctor's first name.
Interesting.
But when she referred to the male doctor, she said doctor first name.
Yeah.
And she said that was really interesting to her because clearly it is ingrained in everyone. So it's not just about, like I say, it's not about saying any one person. This is a societal problem, right? But if we want the best people, we want the best business results, we want to make sure that we're judging people's work fairly and we're giving them opportunities to help and further the business. This book is not about you're doing it wrong. It's really, really about you're missing out, but there's easy things you can do.
Yeah.
In my book, actually, I mention a plumber and I said and say she. And someone actually,
Yeah.
I said, oh, this bit's weird. And I was like, why do you think that is? And they said, oh, because you changed the plumber halfway through. And I was like, no, I never said that
What?
the plumber was male in the first place.
Yeah, I
They
know.
just read plumber and assumed that the plumber would be male and then were jarred when I said she. I thought that was interesting. I didn't change it, by the way.
No,
It's still
good.
female in the
Yeah.
book.
So what can we do to improve things? Because it's important to lead in our industry, and it's difficult to keep the male leaders. And how do we champion young female graduates? Because it's very much a similar story to how do we do this in a way that's unawares, that doesn't feel like we are kind of pushing. Because, people do struggle to get a good balance with this.
So I've seen this in action before where, if the team's going out for drinks, the male grads will quite happily bond with the head of pricing over a pint. They'll quite happily have a pint and talk about that, talk about stuff, blah, blah, blah. But CEOs or chief pricing officer, head of pricing, the, they're hugely disproportionately male generally.
Yeah.
And the female graduates struggle to find common grounds with them. Or teams that use football or cricket as the openers of team days, or do you have like Friday takeaway emails type thing that say, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going to go watch the cricket. That might be what you're doing, but also in those emails you're giving people things that they can ask you about next time you meet in the office. They can
Yeah,
say, oh,
sure.
hey, how was the football? How was the cricket? Did you see? I'm going to embarrass myself here by saying Arsenal beat Tottenham, that type of thing.
Entirely possible combination in football, like that. Although actually, I might be on difficult ground there. I think they're big in the Premier League, aren't they?
Okay, well, there you go. So if you're using particularly a lot of men's sport as the openers of those things, then you're not making it easy for women to speak to you, or even just non-sports fans. And let's be honest, pricing actuaries might not be sports
Yeah,
fans
I'm not
either. And
not a
that goes
sports
for men and
person.
women.
Yeah.
Um, and therefore, if you don't have that opener or you're not happily chatting over a pint, it's going to be harder for you to find out about the great work that they're doing. So I would say, firstly, be aware that those openers, they're not just fun openers. They are actually acting as ask me about prompts. Or just be explicit and say, ask me about football, baking sourdough, or my recent holiday to Thailand. Give people a couple of different options that they can choose from. Don't just talk to women about their kids and families.
True. Yeah, that's fair.
That can be really difficult because they might not want to mention it because they want to talk about their work to you, but now they're stuck on the topic. So yeah, don't just do that. But it's all about making it easier for people to connect to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's not just up from a gender lens, but it's also about people from other countries that might not follow British football. I actually personally, as someone that doesn't drink anymore, I find it a bit annoying there's such a drinking culture. And I realise now that there's an awful lot of people in a similar situation that are like, oh, it's a bit annoying. Everyone's going to drink sort of 4 or 5 pints, and I don't really want to do that. So they don't end up part of the group. And also, most of us are introvert, in fairness, and some of us are very introverted, and we do have quite a few neurodiverse people as well. So what about them?
I used to love having meetings with a particular manager who was neurodiverse because whenever he was in a meeting, he would strictly enforce no interrupting. He used to
Oh,
find
I
it really,
like
really
that.
difficult. And that makes a lot of sense. But I loved being in a meeting with
I'm
him.
tempted to keep interrupting.
The book points out that women are more likely to be interrupted. But while there is a gender lens to that, he just found it very stressful. And so while this book focuses on including women and the benefits of that, a lot of it is actually applicable to a lot of different groups.
I was rather unaware of this interacting thing with women actually, and I read about it in a different book, and from then on I've just been really aware of it. And I will probably admit to my own, until I read that, I then thought about my own behaviour, and actually I probably was more likely to interact with women than a man. And I notice it a lot now. So Catrin and I, we obviously have meetings together quite often with other people. I have noticed that you are far more likely to interact than I am, even when I've been talking for ages.
The book actually points out that women are more likely to interrupt women than men as well. So this
Oh,
isn't just
interesting. I
men.
didn't realise.
Yeah, this isn't just men interrupting women, it's women interrupting women.
Yeah.
And so I think that, like I say, we all have bias.
Yeah.
And this book is very open that everyone, men and women, have gender bias. But if we want our companies and our teams to be as strong as they possibly can be, there are easy things that we can all do. And it definitely not in a guilt-inducing way. It's actually a really nice, easy read that is interesting and accessible.
It looked fairly short as well. Is it just nicely very succinct?
So the book is about 240 pages. This is a
That's not too
hardback. I
bad.
don't really like hardbacks most of the time, but I got it from the library. It's about 240 pages, and then it's got another 3 or 4 pages of the tips and takeaways. That's the cheat sheet. And obviously it's got further notes and reading in the back. It reads really quickly. I think I finished this in 2 days. 2, 3 days.
Mm,
It's very easy to
nice.
it was a weekend. And
Mm.
it was actually very fun to read. I enjoyed it, and I would recommend this particularly for leaders.
Mm.
Like I say, the handy cheat sheet is really helpful. As a good summary, you might even want to pick 2 or 3 that you really, really want to implement. And even though I've read quite a bit about this topic before, there were still lots of new things and examples that I took from it. So I do recommend this book. Really good.
Does it have a lot of anecdotes in it? I always really like when business books include kinds of anecdotes.
It does have a lot of examples. I'm not going to
Mm.
say anecdotes because I don't like anecdotes where the author just says, I spoke to this one person who said this one thing. What it does have is it has a lot of very well researched examples. So when she talks about the Icelandic financial crash and
Mm.
how that relates to gender, she talks to a variety of Icelanders, all different, some in government, some of the general public. So they are obviously anecdotes, but she's not just relying on one person as her source material. It's really well researched. I think that is very enjoyable. Like I say, it's got enough new stuff in there that everyone will take something away from this.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I will be sure to add that to my reading list then. Next time, we are going to be talking about Seeking Fairness at Work, which is a book about methods and tips and tools in order to address whether we are fair at work between both management and the employee, and also between different employees. So it does follow on quite nicely from this book as well. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Price Writers transforms pricing professionals into the most respected leaders in insurance. Find out more about our engaging training, graduate scheme, and workshops by visiting pricewriter.com.